I didn't even have a computer, dude. I showed up to Stanford without a computer.
Wow.
If you can imagine that.
That's crazy.
The generational
yeah.
and gap that I was under. And
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to write a 10-page. I never even knew how to print that long, that far, that many pages. So I had to learn really, really quick. And I talked to some of my friends that went to these elite prep schools, you know, on the East Coast. They cost $40,000 a year in high school. And they're like, oh yeah, I had a 10-page paper due every week. You know, they're basically redoing stuff they had already seen, books they had already read. They knew how to speak to professors. I was so intimidated to even speak to a Stanford professor. I was like, why do they want to, you know, they're like, oh yeah, go to office hours. And I was like, when are office, you know, I didn't know any of this stuff. Like, it was just a culture shock to me.
Wow.
It was just like another world that I had no idea how to navigate.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He is a fellowship reconstructive surgeon and board certified dermatologist. He is also a fellow of the American Academy of Dermatology and an associate member of the American College of Mohs Surgery. Additionally, he has over 40 scientific presentations, publications, and book chapters on reconstructive surgery, skin cancer, and cosmetic dermatology. He grew up in San José and received his bachelor's in human biology with honors from Stanford University. He was fortunate to study abroad at Brasenose College, Oxford University, and Universidad Autonoma del Estado de Mexico in Cuernavaca, and is fluent in Spanish. After college, he completed 3 years of graduate training at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in Maryland. He then returned to Stanford to complete his medical degree with an emphasis in melanoma and pathology research. His transitional internship was at Valley Medical Center. Subsequently, he completed a residency in dermatology at Stanford and then pursued a Mohs micrographic surgery and cosmetic fellowship with Dr. Richard G. Bennett at UCLA, with an emphasis on reconstructive surgery. He also enjoys practicing in the Bay Area and has spent the past 2 years caring for patients in Sonoma and Marin counties. He's a fan of running, snowboarding, golf, wine, traveling, and cryptocurrency. Please welcome to the podcast, Dr. Erik Cabral.
Dr. E, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Such an honor to be here.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
It's nice to have you, man. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, right?
Yeah, we were trying to calculate it, but we won't put too many numbers out there.
Yeah, the funny thing is, so like when you showed up, he was kind of like having a reminiscing deja vu of like, you know, this area and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so again, great to have you. You know, I know that your story is pretty powerful, and we always like to start the podcast with kind of getting to know the person, like how you grew up, where you grew up, about your family and stuff, because we feel here that if they know where you come from, people will connect with you better. So tell us a little bit about, you know, your upbringing. You grew up in San Jose?
I did. It's great to be home. It's great to be nearby. Like you said, it's just like deja vu and reminiscing.
How long has it been since you've been kind of back in the South Bay?
I've basically at 18 when I went to Stanford, it's up the way, but I spent a lot of time training. So basically when I left, I kind of, didn't really come back except to, for some of my training at Valley down the street.
Wow.
But I grew up, first in Virginia,
Virginia?
Virginia.
Yeah, first in
East
Virginia.
Coast.
No, first in Virginia, the street, downtown San Jose.
Oh, downtown San Jose.
I'm like East Coast?
I was trying to throw you for a loop.
Yeah.
You did.
So
the streets,
downtown first then.
Downtown San Jose. So, no, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. You have an amazing studio.
Yeah.
It's really great. And
so Virginia.
Right. Yeah. Down the street, basically, like right off Bird Avenue. Went to Gardner Elementary. My mom was a single mom.
Oh, okay.
And, growing up there, was tough during the 80s, with everything happening with all like, the drugs and gang violence and all that stuff. So I actually never really thought I'd live past 21, to be honest with you,
Really?
growing up in that neighborhood.
Wow. Yeah, Virginia's pretty bad in downtown, or it was back then.
Yeah, it was, for people that know San Jose, it was called Horseshoe.
Oh,
what does that mean?
It's just like one of the main gangs there.
Horseshoe gang.
And so, our house was broken into 3 times. I was the oldest, it was tough. I didn't really have many role models.
So how many siblings do you have?
I have 4 total.
Okay.
2 on my mom's side, 2 on my dad's side.
Okay.
They were divorced when I was 2.
So which ones did you grow up with?
Mainly my mom.
Okay.
Mainly my mom.
So were they older, younger?
I'm the oldest, so they're all younger.
Oh, wow.
So I had it bad.
Yeah, more responsibility,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully I try to set a good example.
Well, I'm sure
when it's all said and done.
Yeah. When it's all said and done, I'm pretty sure you have, right? So growing up, you had 2 siblings that lived with you, right?
Correct.
And you were the oldest, and your mother was a single mother.
Yes.
So you were basically the man of the house.
Basically, yeah. I remember, my mom working 2 jobs. She'd come home. She'd get us settled in. She'd leave me out stuff to heat up for my brother and sister. We ate a lot of top ramen in those days.
Wow. Yeah.
And had to get them to bed because she used to work till late at IBM. And I remember I used to kind of pretend I was asleep, but I used to wait for her, hear her car coming in the driveway, and I didn't want her to know I was still up. So I'd like run to bed as soon as I heard her pull in. And, but yeah, it was tough, man.
Okay.
But, it taught me a lot of, how to care for others and to be compassionate and to basically be humble and appreciate everything you have.
How did you stay out of trouble?
There was a time where I was, maybe Isaac knows a little bit about this, yeah, I did find trouble every now and then, or I was looking for trouble. But, I rebelled, like most teenagers, and being in that environment where, you see the negative role models. So I can't say that, it was all positivity.
Right.
But I quickly learned that, that lifestyle just doesn't go anywhere. And so it was like very upfront.
Yeah.
So at an early age, you knew that wasn't like, you don't want to go that path, that road.
Right. Most of all, I just didn't want to let my parents down, and, I wanted to choose a different path because I saw where the other path would lead me to juvenile hall, to, prison, to death, and violence. And instead of being part of that negativity, I wanted to flip it and try to be a positive role model for, my family and the community and stuff. So that's why it's great to be back here. And thanks for putting the word out and doing great stuff with this podcast.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think people need to hear your story. And I think after they watch everything, they're going to see you in a different light, right? So was your father like in your life back when you were young?
Yeah, he was. When I look back on it now, he exposed me to things that were really amazing. We have a great relationship. Being exposed to my cousins on that side of the family. So, he dealt with his own issues. But when he could, he did the best he could. And I really appreciate him for that. But it was, kind of sporadic for a minute. But at times, like when I really started getting into negative stuff, my mom's like, you got to go with your dad.
Oh, wow.
So she's like, you're out, tough love, which was good because he kind of gave me the tough love and real regimen that I needed.
Yeah.
Was it also in San Jose?
He was in Santa Clara at that time in high school. So
They're like neighbors.
Yeah,
right?
not too far.
Yeah,
not too far.
Okay.
The
So
funny thing about San Jose, though, is back then, Santa Clara was like considered far. Like
Right.
people kind of stayed in their own little like neighborhood. Like people wouldn't leave. You know?
It was your hood.
Yeah.
There was no Uber back then.
Yeah.
You couldn't lift to to the next town over.
And you probably couldn't drive either. So
right.
like,
You take 3 hours of buses to get there. So yeah, I agree. It was next town over, but it seemed like a world away, right? Because it wasn't like barrio type stuff. Santa Clara was like a dream, like a suburbia, I would say, back in those times.
Yeah, so
now San Jose is much different.
Yeah.
Now
Very
San Jose is
different.
much different. So.
Yeah. So you went from the hood to suburbia. How'd you end up in the south side of San Jose?
South San Jose. So my mother eventually moved from downtown, and she ended up in South San Jose. So
you were there before you went to your dad?
At the same time.
Okay.
So my mom was like late, so I went to Santa Clara, and then eventually, once I kind of chilled out, I kind of went back with mom.
Yeah.
Which was good, and so that's how that connection came about.
Yeah. So once she realized that you were out of the whole wrong path, she brought you back home.
Right. Once she realized, hey, like he's getting good grades, he's with a good crowd, he's really trying at school, really trying to get scholarships, really trying to do this. She was more accepting and supportive, and and eventually all worked out.
Your mom seems like a pretty intelligent and strong woman.
She's been awesome. I mean, she's been my rock throughout.
Yeah.
I mean, she's awesome. I really owe it all to her. And obviously we come from a big family too, and they all help. But she's always been the kind of person that everyone in the family kind of goes to with issues, and
like the matriarch of the family, would you say?
I would say she's a matriarch kind of figure in the family, where if people are arguing or people are having issues, they'll kind of use her to kind of smooth things out. And I mean, yeah, she was awesome. I mean, she raised 3 kids on her own, and really was a hard worker, and did what she had to do. And she's a great role model. What can I say?
Yeah.
She's my mom.
It makes sense.
She wrote my bio too, by the way. She
Thanks,
put that
Mom.
together.
It's a great bio, right?
Sound like a super mom.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we both grew up here in the South Bay, in Silicon Valley, and both our mothers worked at tech companies. How long was your mom at IBM for?
She was there almost 10 years.
Okay.
Overall.
Wow. And so my mom worked at Intel for 36 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But
nice.
I mean, it's kind of funny. So it's both female, Hispanic, in the male dominated tech industry, right? Probably were underpaid, but worked very hard and to put food on the table and raise a family. You know what I mean? That's pretty awesome. So what do you think the biggest lesson is that you learned from your mom that still sticks with you today?
I think compassion.
Okay.
And always give people the benefit of the doubt. Always, when they're down and out, lend a hand. I remember having cousins that were going through issues. They would come stay with us, or like I said, her being a mediator. Always just kind of looking out for others. Even though we didn't have much ourselves, she would always be. I mean, just right now when we were at a family gathering, she's like, I gotta go. And we're like, why do you gotta go, Mom? She's like, she has a neighbor that's kind of disabled. And she's like, oh, I gotta go help my neighbor get something to eat. I mean, she's always putting herself. I'm always putting others before her own, her own agenda. Yeah. And so that I think she really influenced me in that respect to be involved in medicine and healthcare. Being a caregiver. I mean, she didn't go to medical school or anything, but in her own way, she's really been a person that cares for others.
So that's how you ended up wanting to study in the health?
I think so. I think I connected, my interest in science with that whole kind of compassion and looking out for others and trying to help others out when they're in need. So I think she instilled that in me, and also being the oldest, looking out for my brother and sister. I think overall, as I look back, what really motivated me, I think that was key.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you said your interest in science. Have you always been interested in science? I
think I was, when we were chatting earlier, I didn't really ever see myself in this. I didn't really grow up and say, oh, I want to be a doctor. I didn't actually connect any of that. I really just was always kind of, when I was in school, kind of nerdy in school, and I just gravitated toward that because I saw how you can directly apply knowledge of that scientific method directly to getting people healthy. Right. And I think we've seen a lot of that during this time where we've just made scientific advances, and it's just helped us get through this whole time.
Right. So you've always been kind of studious, kind of like attracted to learning. Do you remember any moments when you were young where you realized, like, I'm pretty good at this learning stuff and this study stuff?
I skipped a couple grades in elementary. I remember doing like spelling bees. I was always, doing well. And I wasn't like a Doogie Howser or anything, but
almost
maybe. I think I was pretty lucky. I had great teachers that looked out for me and said, hey, you got something going on here, you should do it. And like I said, I did rebel. But I'm glad that I was able to use maybe some God-given talents to do well for people.
Did you have any other interests besides being in the medical field, in the health field?
I did look at other things. I looked into law for a little while. I looked into some, like humanities type stuff. But in the end, I just always kind of came back to medicine.
So it's always been about helping people then? I
think so. I think when I really reflect on it, I think obviously you want to be like your parents, right? I mean, whether we know it or not. Like
Makes
you know,
me
it's
think.
kind of deep. It's
Yeah,
kind of
it
deep
is.
because like it was funny because my sister was kind of telling me, speaking of family, she was kind of saying she's like, Eric, I think I'm becoming like mom. And I was like, oh, you're just learning that now. It's like you've always kind of been like her. And then, and as I reflect on my own path,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
I think obviously they're there, so they're your first role models, I think.
Yeah, I don't think anybody gets into the medical field if they don't like to help people.
Yeah, there's better ways to do things, trust me. I mean, being in Silicon Valley, there's better ways to do stuff. I mean, you really have to be dedicated, and it's tough, especially, you know, I keep referring to this time, but it's challenging, and but it's rewarding. I love what I do. But it's challenging. It's a challenge.
Yeah,
for sure.
So let's go back to when you went back to the South Side now, because that's kind of how we got to know each other through a mutual friend.
Yes.
Shout out to Josh Berger, right? Yeah,
Burger Boys.
Yeah, so the Burger Boys, awesome group of brothers. But so you go back to South Side, right? And how did you meet? How did you and Josh meet?
We met actually during like a football game.
Oh, okay.
He likes telling the story. I think we almost got in like a fight because, like I said, I grew up in downtown, so everything was like rough. You know, Virginia horseshoe. Everything was all fighting and, you know, just survival. Yeah. And so I go to the South Side and it's like, you know, like everybody's like getting along. I'm like, what is this? You know what I mean? We gotta get some edge to this. So there's like a football game, and I guess he kind of some contact, and I was like, no, man, hey, what's up? You know, I was like quick to do that, and so we almost got in a fight, and then we just ended up, you know, getting to know each other and have been really, really good friends, best friends, and to this day.
How long has it been now?
Oh man, it's going on 30 years. I mean, you're talking about, it's a while. It's a long time, but you know, I like to keep good people around me.
Yeah. Josh is a good guy.
Like to hold on to
family already.
Exactly.
You know, they say 30 years. Oh my goodness.
I mean, there's family I don't talk to. You know what I mean? There's family. Yeah. I think they say, what is it? Friends are the family you choose. And, you know, so this group has always been a really, really, and they've always supported me. You've always supported me. Your family's always supported me. The Burger family's always supported. I mean, I could not do this alone. I mean, I want to stand up here and try to say, oh yeah, I did all this stuff that you read by myself, but no, like I said, a lot of people have really, really helped me out at key moments, and I'm really grateful for all that. Yeah.
They say blood makes you related, love makes you family.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also too, this show, we want to inspire people to find their true purpose and follow their bliss, we say. But I feel like you've always been in alignment with your purpose in a way, because, you know, obviously you skipped a couple grades. Obviously, learning in school was something that was like basically God-given. It was like a talent, right? You know, so you kind of took something that you knew was kind of your lane, kind of like what you were put on this earth to do. And then you took the lessons from your mother as far as being a giver and helping people, and you just kind of combined them both and said, what's the best career is basically medicine, right? And it's funny you say that because I didn't realize it, but so my father, I was very close to my father growing up, and when I was young, when they say your subconscious is formed, my father was an entrepreneur, and I am certifiably unemployable. Like I got fired and rehired from 2 jobs at the same time. Oh wow! Because I told off my boss. You know what I mean? I'm not saying to do that, but let's just say that
fire your boss.
Yeah, let's just say that my genetic makeup is more entrepreneurial than employee. Nothing wrong with employee, right? But I'm just saying I learned that from my dad growing up. Right? He ended up an employee like at the end of his life, but when I was watching and learning and being molded, he was an entrepreneur, right? So I think it's the same thing with your mom. Your mom was always helping. You were just naturally gifted at education and learning, and you said, hey, why not mend these two? And that's straight down the medical field.
I was very fortunate to find that purpose. You know, a lot of people always search for it or never find it. So I'm just very grateful, very thankful, very appreciative to everybody that helped me and helped me along, because I wanted to give up so many times. I'm telling you, med school was not easy. Tough, I was, you know, it was a kind of a different time too. I was talking to some medical students, and now they're much more supported in terms of their wellness, their health, their mental health, their spirituality. Back then, when I was training 10, 15 years ago, going through it, I mean, they would be brutal. You know, it was like bullying and and they were just like, suck it up. I had to go through this. Yeah. You have to go through this. It was kind of like a hazing.
Military.
Yeah, hazing.
It sounds like a military.
It's very militaristic. When you're training in medicine, it's very militaristic because there's a hierarchy. You have to, the lead doctor trains the doctor, then trains the resident, that trains the intern. You read all my training. Yeah. That trains a medical student, that trains a pre-med. It's very hierarchical. And nowadays, what I'm finding in speaking to medical students, I still do some teaching at Stanford, is that they flip the script. It's all about wellness. It's all about them taking care of themselves.
That's great. I'm
Physician,
very happy to
you have to heal thyself.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn it, and we've talked about plant-based, we've talked about spirituality, we've talked about traveling. Yeah. All these things to keep yourself balanced in your personal life so that you can find your purpose in your professional life and excel in your profession. It's a constant battle. Yeah. I've had to adjust so many times.
It's like you have to nurture your own self, fill your own cup before you can be there for others.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you said a couple things. So first of all, purpose, right? So I'm very glad, and this is the reason I wanted you on here. So because I know you're in your purpose, like you're living your purpose, and like you mentioned, that's very rare for people to actually be doing that. And I think it's because of influences around them, from parents, family, media, that everyone feels they're supposed to do this certain route. And our goal here is to try to move the needle, because they say 87% of people don't like what they do, and 10% of people hate what they do. So that means only 3% of the population actually is living their purpose, right? We feel that's wrong. We feel it needs to be more towards the middle, at least, right?
Right.
So we want to bring in people that are living their purpose and sharing their story and how they got there. And it wasn't easy, like you said, you know. And even though it is your purpose, and that's good for people to understand, it's not going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's just going to be like rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, right?
Absolutely.
But you have somehow the energy to make it through the hard times because you are operating in your purpose, right? They say when man finds their purpose, they come alive, right? So I appreciate that, right?
Absolutely.
And then the other thing you mentioned was, I'm so glad you mentioned that the medical field is now leaning towards teaching the people about health and wellness, because first of all, in the medical field, you're surrounded by sickness, right? So depending on what part of it you're in, right? But still, you come in and people bring their so it's like it's an energy, right? So if your energy is not up to par, what makes you think you're going to be able to help these other people? You know what I mean?
Correct.
So I appreciate that, because one thing that that I was kind of like I questioned about the medical industry was that they're so good at treating and medicating, but they didn't understand the nutrition and the wellness part of it. But now that you said they're switching to that, that's amazing. You know what I mean? I think that's awesome. But you made it through boot camp.
Oh yeah.
Do you feel like it's kind of funny because it's kind of like how you grew up. You know what I mean? And you went through horseshoe of medicine and now you're on the other side.
I mean, I was no stranger to danger, So a lot of times I was just like, oh, this is easy. You know what I mean? A lot of folks that did not face adversity or that had the whatever silver spoon or that lived in La La Land or wherever, didn't have that. But I was able to somehow overcome and transcend all that, and certain times stick with it and persevere. Whereas, I mean, there were at least 3 or 4 people that dropped out of my med school class my first year, or stopped out and didn't come back, or came back later, etc. It's not easy, like you said. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's not easy. So you got to kind of figure out, like, is it worth it for me? Is this my true purpose? And once you understand that, persevere with whatever mechanisms because it is worth it. I mean, it is worth it in the end when you find your.
How did you remind yourself, even though you were going through challenges?
Speaking to my family, a lot of people gave me tips like, you write an essay, or you write your resume, or you write something to be accepted into something. A lot of people said, well, go back and read that. What was your original will and testament that why you wanted to be here?
So it's remind basically yourself, your why.
Yeah. Your why. Why did you? Yeah. Why are you here? And a lot of times you get so knocked astray in this boot camp, and you're out in the wild, and and then you ground yourself back and be like, okay, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why do I want to do this? And part of it was, like you said, family, your parents, you alluded to that, and your purpose. So just, it's important, I think, every now and then to ground yourself back to like, why am I in this lane?
Yeah. And, a couple things you mentioned too, which is powerful. So you mentioned mental toughness, right? A lot of times we don't realize why things happen to us. And maybe, of course, it sucked at the time when you were growing up in the hood and, you were just surviving and, helping your family. But later, like, I love the Steve Jobs quote. He said, you cannot connect the dots looking forwards. You can only connect them looking backwards. So now you can look backwards and go like, oh, so this helped me build mental toughness, which made me tougher than most of the other students to get through medical school, which put me where I'm at now.
Right. I think it's you're the sum of your experiences. Like, you're exactly where you should be, and your journey or your distance traveled, every stop along the way, everything you absorb puts you where you need to be. And so I always kind of looked back and reflected and made sure that I integrated that. And I think over time, you there's some clarity. You look through that lens and see, why did this happen? And things, people always say things happen for a reason, and you may not know at the moment, and you're like, oh, this is, ooh. But in the end, you find that, hey, every experience you have, every person you meet, every experience, I think, just adds to your being and your substance, and like you were referring to, that energy does transfer. So I truly believe that.
Yeah. So, let's go back. So when did you really start to like excel in scholastics? Like when did everybody know, okay, Erik is going somewhere?
I think in elementary, I think I tested into gifted and talented.
Okay.
When I was in elementary.
Okay.
And I had several people just tell my mom, and like I said, I didn't really know it. I was like into sports. I was like, I was like, I want to go play football. I want to go play basketball. I just want to run around and
all that energy, right?
All that energy. I was like, I just want to like be like a sports person. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I'm gonna be whatever. So yeah, it was just that realization that, when they tested me and they did all these things, and it just came out, and I didn't really. I was like, okay. So that was fine.
You said Gift and Talented?
It was a program called Gifted and Talented Education. GATE,
okay.
back in the day. So I would have special classes. When I was in elementary, they'd bus me to a middle school to take advanced classes. So I mean, I just thank the man above, he just gave me that. And I'm hopefully putting it to good use.
Yeah, I believe you are.
Yeah, you are. Definitely.
So when did you start taking ownership of your God-given gift for studying? Because I know you said you wanted to do this, you wanted to do that, but it's not until you take ownership of it and say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. When did that happen? Do you know?
I think it was at that transition where I was finished like rebelling. I was like, man, this juvenile hall, like trying to be a graffiti artist or trying to join a gang, this is not going anywhere. And so it just really, when I went to go live with my dad and I was in a new school, that I finally just said, hey, I got to do this. I got to hit the books. I got to go to college. I got to kind of find my way. And then I just started believing in myself, and I just started, really seeing that I can really, hang with the brainiac kids. Yeah. Because maybe this is a theme to touch on, but, growing up where I grew up, there weren't many role models that you referred to, like your mom and my mom in tech. Yeah. There weren't many Latino role models back in those days. You saw the Latino guy on TV was a gangster, was the drug dealer,
movies, it's
the
like
narco,
a stereotype in the movies.
The narco, exactly, the whatever, the bad guy. For people of color. Yeah. You don't see the people of color that are scientists or physicians or lawyers or you know what I'm saying? So that was that mentality back in the day, and I had to kind of accept to myself and kind of get past that I could do as good, if not better than anyone else, and just believing in myself and accepting accepting my role and accepting my talent, and pursuing it. And eventually the colleges started calling, the Scholastic Association started calling, and then I started really to believe it. Like, hey, I can take this to the next level. I could really do something with this. And like I said, a lot of people helped me out, different teachers taking me aside saying, hey, what do you want to do? Like, I really like the way you write, or I really think you're one of the best students we have here. What do you want to do with that? And so mentors are key. Yeah. Mentors were key.
That's a very powerful statement, because I remember I still struggle. I don't know. I've never really been good at math. I'm more of a creative, But I had a horrible math teacher in high school. He actually got fired halfway through the year. That's how bad it was. And I believe it. I still struggle with math to this day because of that. So, but it's important you say that, because we know each other. You don't see yourself. You're humble, right? But even for me, from my perspective, like it's very impressive to see you where you're at now, because we grew up together, Nobody around us was doing what you're doing, you know what I mean? Like, while we were partying and wasting our life away in our 20s, man. This guy was studying and mastering his craft and all that kind of stuff. And I think I remember we were like 17 and we were just talking, and I don't remember exactly the conversation, but I was like, well, watch, he's going to be doing all this. He's not having all the fun that we're having, but when he hits that age and he graduates and he becomes a doctor, then he's going to be having a lot more fun than all of us, right? And we've talked about it. Man. But no, I think that's important, especially as a Latino, coming from San Jose, and obviously being born in not even the nicest area of San Jose, right? Coming from a broken home, single mother, like, you had all the chips stacked against you, right? You had all the things that said you're going to be a statistic, right? And instead you flipped the switch and became like an outlier, which is awesome. You know what I mean? So did you graduate from high school early?
I could have. Like at 16, I started taking college classes. Okay. So they were like, you're done. And I didn't even know, man. I honestly, like, a lot of the stuff I kind of by chance, I'm just like, I'm going to keep studying. I'm going to just do what they say. And the chips were going to fall. I hope this, so I was doing like double work, extra work. I didn't really know. So when I got to Stanford, I was already basically a junior.
Wow.
I basically could have graduated like in 2 years.
When you first were a freshman, basically.
Yeah, I have enough credit to be a junior, and I didn't even know it. I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're like working harder. Yeah. Like, I already did this. I was like, and they're like, what were you trying to do? And I was like, I don't know. I was just trying to.
I accidentally graduated from Stanford.
Yeah, I was like, no, literally. I remember they were looking at my transcript and they're like, what are you trying to do? And I was like, I thought this was what everybody did. I was like, I'm here just trying to, pull my weight. I mean, I'm not even know if I'm supposed to be here. I'm just a brown man in America.
Yeah, you're ahead of the game. That's amazing.
I didn't even know, because I started taking college classes when I was 16. Wow. And I remember going to night school with people working jobs and everything. But they were basically at my high school. They're just basically like, we don't have anything else for you. And I just kind of went and did my thing. And so when I showed up, I had all this credit.
So you basically just put your head down and got to work.
You dove yourself into just studying and studying.
I did. Yeah, I did for a while.
What did you do to have fun?
Those times, I mean, these guys were always around. So, I mean, there were times we got together.
We would drag them out.
Yeah, we'd have a good time. I mean, I don't want to act like I was a monk or I was a hermit. Yeah. I mean, we had a good time. But, I mean, I was focused. Yeah. Because I kind of had that mentality of like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to take advantage of it. And I think back in those days, too, there was a lot of, man, this was a different time. I mean, now they have like first gen programs. They have all these programs for students from where I'm from. But back then, it was all like, oh, you're just affirmative action. You're lucky to be here. Wow. You're filling a seat because of your skin color or your whatever.
Jeez, that's what they would tell you?
Well, I mean, it was implied. I mean, believe it or not, people still say it. I believe people still say it. I mean, you see the issues we have, right? Yeah. These are stuff people don't really talk about. And I face, because I work with the public, right? So I see, I walk in and a lot of people, mistake me for, are you the Spanish interpreter?
Wow.
Are you the custodian? I'm being legit.
Are you serious?
I'm being 100 with you.
Wow.
You're smarter than you look. I get all these like what they now call microaggressions.
Jeez.
Where people have a vision of who their doctor should be.
Exactly.
And I'm not Marcus Welby. I'm not Doogie Howser. I'm
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
I'm this.
Yeah. Well, you're
So-
Dr. Erik Cabral. That's
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah. I mean,
don't judge a book by its cover.
exactly. Exactly. So, I deal with that and it's fine. I really hope one day things would be different. But I mean, like I didn't really know I was poor till I got to Stanford. Then I'm like, I am poor.
Yeah, because you saw a different level.
These folks are on another level.
You know what? Let's talk about that. Yeah. First of all, you need kudos to you, man.
Oh man,
because
thank you, brother.
you're actually a role model for young Latinos who are intelligent, or maybe they want to be. Like, all it takes is one, right? You're like the one that broke the 4-minute mile. You know what I mean? And you mentioned focus. Like, that is what lacks in any young person is focus. Like, they're not focused on anything but what's going on that weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So focus and hard work were kind of like your mantra. And then we'll get into Stanford. But where did that focus come from? Because it's very hard for a young person to be focused.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think back. I think part of it was I saw, coming from San Jose, I saw what the other path led to.
Okay.
It was very real. I mean, you and I have friends that were probably in gangs and past. I mean, we know people.
My cousin was lost to the system.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So I'm like, I am not gonna be there. Like that scared me straight.
Okay.
So I was like, you flip the script all the way to the other side where I'm like, there's nothing could go wrong if I'm in here in this library studying. I cannot get shot or stabbed. The librarian.
Drive-bys going on.
There's no drive. The librarian's not gonna stab me.
Yeah.
I have a couple extra library books.
No one's gonna steal your books.
No one's gonna steal my stuff. Like I said, I mean, it was real for me. I mean, our house got broken into. I seen people get jumped. I got jumped. I got beat up in downtown. I mean, we saw fights. We saw this gunshots. I mean, we lived through this crazy time back when San Jose was before it was Silicon Valley.
It's weird to think about the stuff we've been through and how it's like, I don't know, man. I just remember watching shootings and people like, and I'm like, how did I not even get affected by that?
Exactly. So I think part of it was that, and then part of it was, like you said, I kind of had that purpose, and I'm like, in order to be a doctor, I really have to study. I really have to. And then I think part of it too, which I kind of alluded to, it was always like, I got to kind of prove that I could hang with these folks that are coming from these backgrounds. And they would literally tell me like, why are you studying so hard? Why are you like, what are you trying to do?
My dad paid for everything. I don't have to study.
I was on the sailing team. My dad photoshopped me into the,
let's talk about that real quick because, this is a different world. Right? Like Stanford is no joke. Like, we grew up in the Bay Area, so Stanford's kind of like, Stanford, right? But really in the academia, in the university realm, Stanford's like legit, right?
It's a great, I mean, I'm really proud of my training. I mean, I'm really, really honored that I was able to spend time there and really learn from the best. I mean, I think they train me to be ready for anything. So
So talk about the east side or downtown, south side Hispanic kid now in the realm of Stanford. I don't want to use nationalities, but let's just say the realm of people who maybe come from more affluent families and so what was that like, that transition?
It was a culture shock. Like I said, I didn't know I was poor. Like poor till I went to Stanford. Right. Because you had folks showing up driving Mercedes, as a freshman. Right. And my mom dropped me off in our beat up van. And I was like, okay, like, all right, this is, we're going on vacation to Bali. We're going on vacation to Paris.
You're like, we're going camping.
And I'm like, I just want to stay here. I don't want to go back to San Jose. Like, you mean I have to leave the dorm? Like, why can't I just stay here? And they'd be like, no, you got to go for spring break. And I'm like, I have nowhere to go. Yeah. I'm like, where did you go? Oh, I went to Bali. I went to skiing in Aspen. I went, this Paris. I was in Switzerland. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. you're different. Yeah. But on the real, it was eye-opening. And like I said, it just drove me just to work hard and it was a supportive institution. I had friends, don't get me wrong. But like they were just because they went to all the best schools already.
Mm-hmm. From
so
like
they went to prep
basically.
schools. Yeah, they went to private tutors, prep schools, academic coaches, boarding schools. So like I got there and they're like, oh, well, we'll have you turn in a, 10-page paper next week. And I'm like, what? I've never written more than like a 2-page paper coming out of San Jose public schools.
Yeah.
You want a 10-page? Is that single space or double space?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even have a laptop. I don't even have a computer. Like, how am I? And they're like, oh, you print it out and you email it to your professor.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the late 90s where
when computers were brand new and all that.
we didn't really have all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I had to sit in like the little computer cluster with the broken computers, and all my other classmates had the latest Mac, the latest. I didn't even have a computer, dude. I showed up to Stanford without a computer.
Wow.
If you can imagine that.
That's crazy.
The generational and gap that I was under. And I didn't even know how to write a 10-page. I never even knew how to print that long, far, that many pages. So I had to learn really, really quick. And I talked to some of my friends that went to these elite prep schools, on the East Coast. They cost $40,000 a year in high school. And they're like, oh yeah, I had a 10-page paper due every week. They're basically redoing stuff they had already seen, books they had already read. They knew how to speak to professors. I was so intimidated to even speak to a Stanford professor. I was like, why do they want to, they're like, oh yeah, go to office hours. And I was like, when are office? I didn't know any of this stuff. Like, it was just a culture shock to me.
Wow.
It was just like another world that I had no idea how to navigate.
How did you adapt eventually?
It's like being trial by fire. I was like, I got to get these grades to get into medical school, and I got to keep up. I mean, I'm not going back to San Jose. You know what I mean? I just, like I said, I just hit the books. I just hit the books really hard and found people and found groups and just went for it.
So your mantra again, hard work and focus.
I was gonna say, hit the books.
I wish I could. I tell students, I'm like, I wish I can make it easy for you. I wish there was an easier way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the tough way, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong if you learn more.
Yeah, they say hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So you kind of just outworked everybody.
I think in the end, I kind of did, because Stanford too. Like you were referring to, there were a lot of these really wealthy, and it was like their first time being away from home.
Yeah.
And I think that was their time where they used it to rebel.
Whereas
I had rebelled. So I would walk in and like people were like smoking weed and hanging out and drinking beer. And I'm like, dude, you're at Stanford. Dude. I couldn't even believe it. I was like, there's nothing wrong with those things, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Have fun, have a good time. We all need to have fun. Yeah. But I was like, dude, I left that life in high school, dude. Like I knew guys that were, smoking, whatever, or drinking in elementary school. You know what I mean? Like, it was hardcore people. And so I didn't need all that. I didn't need to be like, oh, well, now I have my freedom and now I'm away from my family and now I can rebel and now I can have a good time. It's like, I already kind of lived that. So and it's important to seek balance. Like going back, I wish I would have done more to kind of, be more social and stuff. And, I still have friends from college, but I really didn't need all that. So I really kind of just hit the book. And I knew it was going to be a long haul. I knew I was going to have, social circle with fellow medical students, with my and now with my colleagues. So I kind of always just try to get all past that.
So, when did you, when did you start to feel like, okay, I belong with these people? This is my place. Like, was there a point, like a transition where you're like, all right, I made it. I'm a Stanford, student. Like, I'm going to ace this thing. Was there a point where you kind of felt like you fit in finally?
I think after the first year,
okay,
I think I finally felt, okay, well, I get the hang of this. I'm doing pretty well. And probably my sophomore, junior year.
Okay.
I felt like I
pretty quickly though.
I think so. You know, like I said, it's like trial by fire.
Yeah.
It's like being thrown in the pool and be like,
Yeah.
you sink or swim, man.
Yeah.
Sink or swim.
You felt like did you feel like you fitted more or you stood out? Which would you rather be?
I've always kind of referred to it as like the pink poodle. Like they're just folks that just never really knew where to put me. You know, they just, who's this guy? You know what I mean? It's just different. I just think I was just different. And I got a lot of flack, you know, because I wasn't necessarily always hanging out with like the people of color. And then like the other folks didn't really know where to put me either because, you know, I wasn't really like them or didn't look like them or didn't come from the same family. So I just kind of did my own thing. I ended up studying abroad. Isaac read some of my bio. I ended up going to Mexico for some time, which was really eye-opening at that time. Spent 6 months in England.
Talk about that, because Oxford's that's like not like some funny little joke. That's like some serious stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like the major leagues.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, I was just kind of listening to the students. You know, I just listened to them talk about all their trips, talk about they were doing this, they were doing that. It's kind of like, you know, the tide just raises all the boats.
Yeah, rising tides raises all ships.
There you go. That's better said. So I was like, oh, you're doing this? I could do this too. You know, you're going to Oxford? Oh, I'm going to apply too. I'm going to go too. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. I don't know how I'm going to get in. I don't know what I want to do. And they accepted me and I went out there and I just kind of listened to what they were. I was just kind of mimicking because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I was like, what? We can go study somewhere else?
Yeah.
What? You're going to get scholarship to do this? I just kind of was listening and just, you know, all these privileged students that had all these connections and this and that, you know, they were helpful too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like I was just this lone wolf doing all this stuff, but you know, but I was just kind of like, hey, if they're doing it, I could do it. Why not? What's the worst they could say?
Yeah.
No or whatever. Okay, fine. I'm going to try it.
That
power. Sounds cool.
That's the power of associations though. Because even though you weren't familiar, like it was new to you, the fact of you being in that sea of affluent people who have a way different life than the regular people, right? It kind of made you realize it opened up this new realm for you, you know?
Absolutely.
So talk about Oxford. What was that like? Like, where did you stay? Like, what was the studying like? Like,
it was wild. You know, it was actually tougher than Stanford. Really? Because they had all these traditions. Yeah. So you had to, so like I went from, okay, well now you have to write this 10-page paper to you were assigned a tutor. And so you had to write the paper and then you had to present the paper to your tutor. So you actually had to read your essay. Mm-hmm. And as you know, like when you read something, it's not necessarily how you write it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I just learned how to write a 10-page essay. Now I need to know how to present a 10. And I was like, oh man, like I thought I was just getting the hang of this. Now they're flipping the script again. And you couldn't check books out of the library because they're like, well, not even the queen herself can check books out of this 14th century Bodleian library. And I was like, oh, so I mean, I'm going to stay here and whatever. I can't even check the book out. I can't even take it with me. And they're like, no. So it just took me to another level.
Yeah. So Oxford is in England.
Oxford, England.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It was a college called Brasenose, and then they gave us student housing, and then we would eat with the college students. So we were like a member of the college. So they had like high meal where you got dressed up and you ate with your professors, which was weird.
So it was like Harry Potter, basically.
I was about to say, all I can envision is Harry Potter.
Yeah. It was a bit like Harry Potter. You know, to be honest with you, because I was this hardcore student, I think even more, I was kind of alluding to, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I always kind of read more into it than what was assigned or, you know, I never really got into Harry Potter, but I recently did like a year ago, and it's very similar. Yeah. It's very, especially when I went to medical school. Uh-huh. It reminds me of medical school a lot when I started reading and saw the movie, the first Harry Potter. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I've only seen one or two movies, but just the fact you're explaining like when you guys all eat at the same time. Yeah. I just picture like this long, huge, old school table.
It was
really. So one thing I love about
uniforms as well.
Yes, you had to dress a certain way, and you had to wear like a little cape almost.
Yeah, it's like Harry
Harry
Potter.
Potter.
The only thing
There
you were
you go.
missing was a wand, and there you go.
There you go.
Just kidding, Oxford or Brasenose. But yeah. So, anyways, that was just the funny thing about that. So, so the Oxford experience. What was some of the valuable lessons, or maybe something that you took from that experience?
I think just the history of learning and how you learn. Different people learn in different ways, and I think just being exposed to a different system just gave me that perspective. Just appreciated it more. So I think just respecting the fact that everyone learns differently, and respecting the process and respecting the history of learning. I think that really brought that home for me.
They kind of gave you the application part of it, because learning is one thing, but applying is another. Right. So they made you learn and write, but then they said, all right, now here you go. Now recite this to me. Now,
correct.
So it kind of like made you understand it in a different way. Is that kind of what it was?
Correct. How you present it, your tone, your everything to do with it. Like you said, it's one thing to write, but it's another thing to present it. And so it just kind of got different neurons firing.
That's a good point. So like my previous career, the financial industry, what I appreciate the most about it is that it taught me how to be a great public speaker. Like I think that's why I'm doing this. Like I used to be afraid to be in front of a camera. I used to be afraid to talk to people. I was not a good listener. I always talk over people, But because of that experience the last 10 years, I just really I was forced to, like, kind of like you, do presentations in front of 50, 1,000, like all these people. And that, I mean, at first you're terrified. You feel like you're going to die. And then it kind of goes away. Then you're like, oh, I could do this. You know what I mean? But I think it's very interesting how they just kind of said, okay, we're going to teach you how to learn. We're going to teach you how to write what you learned. But now we're also going to teach you how to speak and present what you learned, which is like a whole different ballgame.
It's important because, communication is key in every aspect. And how you communicate, how you emphasize. Public speaking is a great skill. And like you, I was also, very shy, very intimidated. Like I said, I was like, why? I kind of talked myself out of even speaking to professors or raising my hand, or like when we had small groups, when you go to these private schools and boarding schools, that's all they do. And that was part of my grade. So I suffered because I was just too nervous. I was too self-conscious. I was like, what if I say something stupid? Then they realize that I think they call it imposter syndrome now, where you don't feel like you're supposed to be there. So you just stay quiet and hope that nobody notices you or nobody points you out. And so that was a big thing. And it was like part of my grade. So I suffered. And so, I had to compensate for that and overcome it. And person-to-person communication is so key, and it is a skill that you have to learn, and I think it's important.
Yeah. So when people see that on your resume, does that like put you like on a different level?
I think so. I mean, I get a lot of comments on it, because like I said, I work with the public. I mean, there's days I see 30, 40 patients, and it just helps you connect with people. I think that's in the end. I think what I learned over time, and you were referring to this process of how you have building blocks, and every experience builds who you are. And I think now that I've done this for a while, this medicine career I think in the end, it's a lot about the art. People don't want to learn or hear all these technical terms or these fancy schmancy medical terminology. They want to know about you as a person, and they want to, before you can get to their brain or, their motivation, you have to get at their heart. Yeah. And so I think whatever helps me connect with people, and I think that helps me in what I do.
Yeah. They say people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Correct. So before, coming out of Stanford, I was always like very technical, like, oh, this is this and this is, and then, people just roll their eyes like, what are you talking about? And I was just a young doctor, and I was like, okay. Well, that's what I learned. You know, I'm
Yeah.
just telling you what I learned. And, you know, the people want to feel like they connect.
But I think also to your upbringing gives you that ability because you had a different lifestyle. Like these are normal people, right? These are not, affluent, boarding school kids that were going to be doctors. These are just your normal everyday people, right? So you have to be able to know how to connect with normal everyday people.
Right.
And if you never had that life, nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great to have that affluent, successful lifestyle. But it's harder for you to connect with the general public. But because you had both, right? You had how you grew up, and then you had the trial by fire culture shock, and then you had the education, and it's kind of like a great blend of all of them.
Right. And it's funny because, almost to a certain extent, I try to negate that part. I try to let go of it so that I could blend and be this super trained physician.
Yeah.
But in the end, what really I think connected me to people better is that I have that.
Yeah.
But I don't start with that.
Yeah.
When I need to bring it out, I can.
Yeah.
But I deal with the everyday, like we're just speaking now. We're just speaking, just about everyday things.
Yeah.
So I make it a point for every patient. And like I said, there's sometimes I see 30 to 40 patients, so now I've been doing this 10 years.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of
mastered
people.
Your craft, basically.
I hope so. I'm trying to.
They say 10 years or 10,000 hours.
There you go.
Yeah.
I try to learn something specific about each person I meet so that when I see them again, or when I encounter them, or when we're discussing something, I have that something to hold on to, whether it's what they do in their free time, what they like, where they traveled, where they're from. I literally will start with that for the first 5 minutes of just getting to know or reconnecting with them. Yeah. And then we'll talk about the medical part.
Yeah.
And truly, I think now with that art of how to practice medicine, that my art, there's folks that come by sometimes and, yes, they have something going on, but they become almost like friends or
friends or
family.
Yeah.
And they come and they're like, sometimes, well, I just want to come and see you, because we're just chopping it up and having a good time. And it makes it helps me prevent burnout. Yeah. Because if I just become a machine and be like, oh, I'm going to see 35 people and I'm going to make this and this and this robotic, then that burns you out because then you're losing the
human,
big picture, the human
connection.
aspect. And once I started focusing more on that, believe it or not, that re-inspired me, reinvigorated me to keep pursuing this. So I just found that trying to develop that human connection and really finding out something personal about each patient has helped prevent me from it just becoming robotic. And I think that's what in the end medicine is. Yeah. Is going back to that whole compassion thing, is that no matter what your education is or where you went to school or whatever, I think people really in their time of need just want you to be compassionate. Yeah. And they want a friend and they want somebody to believe that they're going to get better. Yeah. And so I think for some time early in my career, I kind of negated that, thinking I just had to be this super technical person and physician, and that honestly turns people off. And the more I worked on the art and worked on getting to know, who would have thought getting to know your patient, it can sometimes get lost in all the new technologies and biomedical advances we have. And I'm appreciative of that, but most people don't want to hear all that jargon. They want really to know that that you know something about them.
Connection. Everything's about connection.
Correct. It is. And energy and all that. So,
in my previous career, they always said never start an appointment before you connect with them. They said spend 45 minutes connecting with them, 5 minutes on the appointment. So, that's awesome. You figured that out.
Well,
that is true. That is very, very true. So I try to do that. Yeah.
You said 45 minutes.
I can't do 45.
No, they said it's an exaggeration, but they said do not even, the CEO would be like, don't even start the presentation until you've connected with them. You just have to find a shared reality.
Exactly.
It's the same way with when I do photography. I do connect with people first. Yeah. And then let the fun begin after that.
It's an icebreaker. And they don't like when you just jump into it. So an appointment is X amount of time. I'm not going to reveal my appointment times, but my patients are watching. But X amount of time. So I'll spend 80% of that allotted time connecting, even something like the weather, sport, or something they're wearing.
Right.
I'll try to find anything.
Shared reality.
Anything. I love that. You have all these names and you name things. I like that.
I have a lot of stuff in there.
That's awesome.
That's also like I like your jacket.
Oh,
First thing I noticed when I saw you.
Yeah, it was like an icebreaker. It's an icebreaker, and so people like that. And then
It has to be genuine, though, people.
Yeah.
Don't just be like, I like your shirt. Anyway.
Exactly.
Really
Don't be fake.
jacket.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. For sure. Well, speaking of human connection, I can be very observing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that you're wearing 2 watches.
Yeah, I didn't even notice
Why
that.
is that?
2 watches. So keeping it authentic. One is literally for time. This watch is for time, and my other watch is a watch that keeps a lot of information. So we were kind of catching up earlier, and I've gotten into different things like crypto and the stock market. So one is to keep track of the stocks without having to go into my phone and because you got to keep an eye on certain things.
Well, that is a phone. It's just a phone on your wrist.
Correct. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I do have an Apple Watch, but I like it so much. It's to record my steps. To me, I use it for fitness purposes and also besides the time.
Absolutely.
But I don't like texting back or anything like that. Like once my phone's away, it's away. Like it's a distraction sometimes.
Well, phones have become everything. It's not a phone. It's everything in one.
It's a computer.
Yeah, it's a computer basically. Yeah.
Correct. And so a lot of times I'm in surgery as well. And so I'll get a message or a text or, like you said, it's a phone, so that I don't have to, go to my phone when I'm in surgery because I'm scrubbed in.
Ah, that makes sense.
I have all everything, so I can kind of glance at certain information.
Right.
So that's the 2 watch thing.
That's a great tool to have. That's awesome.
That makes sense, though. I mean, it
may be weird, but it's functional.
It's
for
not
me.
weird. It's
I
a
don't
tool.
think it's weird. I think it's unique.
It's weird if you weren't
curious.
like a doctor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was curious. Like, why do you have 2 watches
It's
on?
funny. Yeah. I don't even wear watches anymore, but when I did, none of them ever worked. It was just for the look. People are like, your watch doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, I know. I can't even tell the time anyways.
There you go. And it's part of it too. I mean, I can't, I don't want to play the doctor card, but it is hard to quote unquote escape. So even though I'm not in clinic, or I'm still getting, my nurses are messaging me, patients message you, stuff going on there. So even though if you're not there, you're there.
So you're always kind of on call.
Correct. I mean, I hate to say it, I don't want to discourage people because it's gotten better, but it's almost wearing a beeper. Back in the day we used to have the beeper.
Yeah.
Doctors have to beeper, or other people.
If you guys know beepers, leave it in the comments. Type beeper.
There you go.
And send us a photo.
Yeah.
We have to message with beepers, and that was old school.
Yeah,
but
That was in the 90s, right?
that was
I
in the
remember
90s.
those.
You could put a 143 was I love
codes,
you.
beeper codes. Yeah.
Backwards and stuff. But I guess it's for information, communication, and then the other one is literally I rely more to tell time. And I've just always been fascinated with watches in general.
Watches are cool.
Just the art of a watch, the technology of a watch. So that's the thing.
That's definitely technology right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about that, because you did mention that you don't want to scare people off of the doctor, but you have fun. Like, you enjoy your life, right? Like, every time I see you, you're either working or you're in some other country. So I'm like, Jesus, this guy. So let's talk about travel a little bit, right? Because I know you love to travel. How many countries have you been to?
Over 40 now, I think.
40?
Yeah.
Wow.
Over 40
and how long of a period?
Well, my first big one was in college, as I mentioned, going to England.
Yeah.
So that I was able to get a lot of countries in while I was
But not
living
just
in
any England, Oxford.
Yeah, Oxford. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's when really it started.
So what countries did you visit when you were in England?
We went to back in the day, I used to take buses because we couldn't afford the flights, and so I took a bus to Scotland. I took a ferry to Ireland.
Wow.
I went to Wales.
Is it really as windy as they say in Ireland?
It's windy and cold. Wow. It is windy and cold and dark.
Wow. And dark.
Dark.
Gloomy. Dark.
Well, it's gloomy, yeah, because the sun goes down by 3. It's always cloudy to 4. I mean, so it's you have oftentimes very little sunlight. took the train into France, went into Switzerland. I mean, I just kept going and going and going.
That's what I do love about Europe. Once you're in one of those countries, like every country is like going to a different state here in the United States.
Right.
It's a 1-2 hour flight, an 8-hour train ride. Now they got even more like speed trains.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can go from England, because my sister lives in London and I've been there a couple times.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we took a speed train from London. We went to Paris for a day.
Mm-hmm,
like if you live in London, you can go to Paris for a day and come back.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how awesome it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like I want to go have coffee in Paris. We had crepes.
Oh yeah,
and the crepes were huge, and they serve like food in crepes. It's not like
it's
sweet.
like you can have day trips.
Yeah, like day trips and stuff like that. Yeah, so 40 countries.
Thank you for tuning in. That was the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out next Monday, 9 a.m. Please stay tuned.
Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when the next one comes out.